Good day, friends, and welcome to this January 27th edition of Match Play here on CUTV. My name is Cody Jeanette, and alongside of me is Creighton Rabs, and we are here today to discuss some California topics and Pittsburgh regional topics and national sports topics from all across the world. So, without further delay, we are going to get started and start right on the hardwood with the women's basketball team. And the women's basketball team had a great win against Seton Hill on Saturday. And Creighton, my question to you is, did you expect something different to happen in this game, like a different victor, big scoring margin or anything, or was this what you expected?
That's about what I expected. You figured it was going to be a close game. I mean, Seton Hill, they're not exactly the Little Sisters of the Poor, but they're not exactly Gannon or Edinboro either. I mean, it's a very competitive team. You figured it was going to be within 10 points, especially with their game last year at Greensburg, which was a non-conference game. But, I mean, I think being at home, having the home crowd, such as it was, at the game, I think that certainly helped Cal.
Yeah, I did expect California to come out with a victory on this one as well. But even though the margin was only by 8 points or some odd number around there, I expected it to be a little bit closer with how evenly matched these two teams were. They were so close in the standings, so close statistically speaking, that I expected, a nail-biting final half-court shot or an overtime thriller or something like that. Even though California still got the win, very thankful for that, but I expected them to get it in a more dramatic fashion than they did on Saturday.
Oh, okay, so now it's on me. Okay, well, the women were certainly victorious. The men, not so much. They lost 56-46 to Seton Hill, so the momentum from last week's win at IUP kind of vanishing away, kind of like the nice weather that we allegedly had this past weekend. Cody, your thoughts on last Saturday's loss?
Well, there's one thing that sticks out to me that you can point the finger at for California's tough loss against Seton Hill in men's basketball, and that was the field goal percentage from the floor. They shot, I believe it was a 28% percentage from the floor compared to Seton Hill with 50%. Whenever your opponent is almost doubling their success shooting, that's not going to help you at all. Even though the turnover differential was 19-13 in favor of California, if you don't get points on the board, it's not going to help.
And certainly, I think what we saw also was like it's just hard to figure this team out. It's like you go out one night on the road against probably one of the best teams in the conference, and then maybe it was the week layoff that really hurt them a little bit, but it's really hard to get a read as to which California team is going to show up as far as the men are concerned. So, and it doesn't get any easier Wednesday night, and we'll get to that in a minute.
And now, moving from the hardwood to the swimming pool, there was a swimming invitational held at Hamer Hall, the Vulcan Invitational, where California ran away with the victory in that one. And one swimmer in particular, Braylon Tracy, had a phenomenal performance, setting the Hamer Hall record by 20 seconds in the 1650 freestyle event. And she's only a freshman. You heard me right. She's only a freshman. Creighton, how bright is her future with the swim team?
Well, it certainly looks promising. I mean, you're talking about a freshman right up the road from Bell Vernon. I mean, it's worth noting that it qualified her for the conference meet, but it's still a little short of the NCAA qualifying time. But still, I think, I'm not going to profess to be an expert at swimming, but I mean, when you set a record like that, I believe it was like just under 17 minutes. I mean, that's still pretty impressive.
Yeah, it certainly is impressive, especially considering that she's such a young athlete and has a prosperous future ahead of her, granted, for sure. But I believe that as long as the swim team is willing to keep coaching her, move her on, push her to get better, that goes without saying, no matter what skill level you have, that you can always get better at anything you do, and you strive to be the best. And as long as Braylon Tracy continues to strive to be the best, who knows? Her name could be the whole way across the Hamer Hall record chart.
And we get back onto the hardwood. The Vulcan men and women's basketball teams return to action Wednesday night at the Convocation Center when they host Gannon, and then Saturday afternoon, it's off to Slippery Rock. So So, Cody, what do you expect for Wednesday?
Well, honestly, these are two games that I'm really looking forward to. Making the trip to Gannon only to come back home with down faces after both the women and men lost against a division rival like Gannon. They're certainly going to be using the home crowd to their advantage. They're going to be really hungry for a win, and it's going to be really fun to watch. I think as long as the men can improve on their field goal shooting percentage against Seton Hill, and as long as the women can keep doing what they're doing, winning games, they shouldn't have a problem getting revenge against Gannon.
Well, Gannon's going to be a tricky opponent, at least on the women's side. They're the number 5 team in the country. Their only loss was against Edinboro. Notably, that was on the road. Also notable, Gannon has lost the last 3 showdowns here at Cal. They are 3-10 all time against Cal. In Cal, whether it's at Hamer or at the Convocation Center, their last win down his way was 4 years ago, and that's when they went to the Final Four and had an undefeated regular season. But even with that in mind, I like the women's chances. The men, not so much.
All right, and now we're going to move on to the fan topic, where you, the fans, can interact with us here at California University Television by going onto Facebook or on Twitter and finding California University Television and using the hashtag MatchPlayCUTV @_PA respectively for Facebook and Twitter. And you can submit a topic to be used on the show. But we didn't have a topic for this week, so I thought of one myself. And my topic that I'm going to ask you, Creighton, is there one particular sporting complex of any sport, any level, that has always been on your bucket list to attend an event at?
I mean, it's a no-brainer. Etihad Stadium in Manchester, England, which is the home of probably the best soccer team in the British Premier League, Manchester City. Okay, yeah, they're 1 point behind Arsenal in the standings, but still, I mean, I've always wanted to go to England, but even more so go to Manchester City, watch the Blues beat up on somebody, preferably Manchester United, and that a rivalry which makes Steelers-Ravens look like a pillow fight. So I'd have to go Etihad Stadium in Manchester.
And as for me, I have always had a soft spot for stadiums that have had rich histories. For example, on my bucket list, just to name a couple, Fenway Park in Boston, Wrigley Field in Chicago, Madison Square Garden in New York, whether it be a hockey game or a basketball game, I don't care. Just as long as I can go there and see the atmosphere of the historical nature of complexes like that. That's one thing that has always given a soft spot in my heart for putting on my bucket list.
And I've been to all 3. MSG is overrated. Absolutely overrated. Fenway, Wrigley, I would say not. But
well, when we come back to Match Play here on CUTV, we're going to turn black and gold here from red and black, and then we will be discussing some Pittsburgh regional sports topics when we return to Match Play on CUTV.
You are watching CUTV, California University Television.
And welcome back to Match Play here on CUTV, where we have just gone from red and black to black and gold, and we are going to be discussing some Pittsburgh regional sports topics. And first things first, we're going to start off on the ice with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And recently, they have had a lot of trouble with teams low in the standings against Edmonton and Florida, just to name a couple. And tonight, they will be playing the Buffalo Sabres, who are one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference standings-wise. Creighton, how are they going to fare against them?
I'd be a little nervous about the Penguins, but I think the key thing to watch, somewhat sarcastically, check the pregame show. Stan Saverin's hosting, then I think the Pens are in deep doo-doo. But in all seriousness, for whatever reason in recent years, the Pens, they've always struggled against the bottom feeders, like your Floridas, your Carolinas, your Islanders, your Sabres. So, but I mean, it's just one of those corrections over the course of the season. So, I mean, I'd be a little ticked, but I'm not going to panic yet.
Yeah, there is a little bit of concern here that you got to have. I mean, it seems like it's a curse with all Pittsburgh sports, whether it be on the diamond, the football field, or the hockey rink, that you are not able to beat the teams that you should beat. There's a difference between the teams you have to beat and the teams that you should beat. The teams that you should beat, you go completely with a completely different mindset going into the game. You know, it not without a sense of urgency or anything like that, and that could really spell doom for the Penguins if they go into that game with that mindset.
And speaking of the Penguins, Thomas Vokoun skating on the ice last week for the first time this season. He'd been saying he had missed the entire season due to a blood clot, so there's talk he might return. Cody, should Vokoun return, and will he return?
Well, he does have potential to return towards the very end of the season, long after the winter break, or the Olympic break, I beg your pardon. But should he return? I don't think so. Right now, I believe the Penguins have enough goalie depth with Marc-Andre Fleury and Jeff Zatkoff to push them through a very highly anticipated postseason run. You know, if Vokoun can make it, that would be wonderful. I wouldn't be against that.
I think, given the nature of the injury, a blood clot, sometimes those blood clots can be very dangerous, deadly. So I think in a way, it's nice to have Vokoun back, but I think given the way Fleury's been playing this year, if we were talking about the Fleury of last season, Fleury was really at times riding the struggle bus, I think then you could say, well, we need to get Vokoun back. But Fleury's been doing well this year. Zatkoff he's been serviceable. He's had a few games, and he's been a serviceable backup. So Vokoun, take your time.
Yeah, well, don't want you to return to the ice if you're not healthy for sure. Well, moving from the hockey rink to the baseball diamond, the Pittsburgh Pirates it was just recently released that they have 6 of the top 100 off-season prospects of any club in the organization. They rank 4th in that aspect. You know, there's Josh Bell, Austin Meadows, Tyler Glasnow, just to name a few of them. And Creighton, my question to you is, do the Pirates need one of them to fill in a roster spot, or are any of them deserving of one?
I don't think they need him this year. You look at where Tyler Glasnow was in low A ball down in West Virginia. You had Austin Meadows, he recently drafted, short season ball up in Jamestown. Hanson's been split last season between Bradenton and Altoona. Josh Bell was also down in West Virginia. These guys, we're probably a couple years away from seeing them, but the prospects on that list you didn't mention, Jameson Talion, Gregory Polanco, they're probably ready to go. We might see them at PNC this summer.
Yeah, we very well could, and I definitely wouldn't be against that, because one thing that's always been bugging me, or worrying me, I should say, is that open plug in right field with Marlon Byrd being traded in the offseason. You know, you have Austin Meadows is an outfielder, and Josh Bell, another outfielder. They could really have the potential to step up and plug in that final piece of the puzzle to make one of the deadliest outfields in the National League.
But like I said, they're a couple years away, so they'll get a spot, just not yet. At least let them get to Indy first. So meanwhile, speaking of the Buccos, Jared Hughes, who is not related to our former colleague Andy Hughes, I might add, had a breakout rookie season 2 years ago, hit a bit of a slump last season, and now he wants to keep his spot in the bullpen. So should the Pirates keep Hughes in the bullpen next season?
In my opinion, yes. As long as he's willing to step up his game. He did come out as quoted saying that, he has been working on it, referring to his game. He definitely should have a spot. The Pirates last season had one of the toughest bullpens and most feared bullpens in all of Major League Baseball. And if you have one guy that's going to bring as much attitude to the team as Jared Hughes did, he gives a very big stamp of power in that bullpen if you want to keep him in there. So as long as he's willing to, yeah, give him a shot.
He right now, given the way he was pitching last year, he seemed to be more suited for the bullpen, but if the Pirates don't get their starting rotation issues squared away, we don't know if A.J. Burnett is coming back or not. For all we know, maybe Talion steps in if Burnett doesn't return. We don't know that, but there's probably an outside chance that Hughes could ultimately be back in the rotation in case of an emergency, but right now, just leave him where it is. I mean, why break up a good thing?
Well, there's always room for tweaking certain things if you want to make it more powerful of a team per se. So we'll see what the Pirates do in his regard. Now we're moving on to the gridiron for some Steelers news. The Steelers recently hired a new offensive line coach, and the question is, are they going to get better results from Mike Munchak, a former head coach of the Tennessee Titans, and will it spell success for the Steelers?
I don't think it really matters who you have as the offensive line coach. The one thing that a coach really doesn't have control over is injuries. You saw how battered and bruised the offensive line was early on in the season. They finally started gelling. But with that said, I mean, having someone like Munchak as your offensive line coach, at least he has that experience as a head coach. It certainly does help, though it does seem like a little bit of a drop for him to go from head coach to essentially a position coach and not a coordinator. But I think the only way you're going to see better results, stay healthy.
Well, that is a very good point. I will give you that much. But one thing that Munchak has going for him is his past credentials. This is his, I believe, 33rd year in the NFL, whether it be as a player or a coach. He's a Hall of Fame player and was a coach for the offensive line of the Houston Oilers and Tennessee Titans organizations for a while before he became head coach. And they've had numerous Pro Bowl nominations and selections. Numerous players went to the Hall of Fame. He has a lot of credentials to back up his ability to coach the offensive line.
And I think ultimately the offense, we all know who it's going to come down to. Make sure Ben stays upright.
Well, when we come back on Match Play, we are going to be taking a road trip across the country and across the world to discuss some national topics going red, white, and blue here on Match Play. Stay tuned right after this on CUTV.
I come through like a freight train, about to push the line back. Only see the gold line, don't matter if your line stack, because I'm a soldier. You can see my face paint, know that I'ma get mine by knowing that the rest can't. We ready for 'em, let's get it on. We ready for 'em, let's get it on. We ready for 'em, let's get it on. We ready for 'em, let's get it on.
And welcome back to this January 27th edition of Match Play on CUTV. We just got done discussing the Cal-U topics and the regional topics. Now we're going to take a road trip across the country and make it all the way around the world for your national topics. First up on the agenda is, you saw this coming, the Super Bowls this Sunday. Denver Broncos taking on the Seattle Seahawks in the next Super Bowl. Creighton, you got any predictions for the big game?
Yeah, I think Wes Welker is going to light up Richard Sherman like a Christmas tree. It'll be the worst burning involving a Sherman since General Sherman invaded Atlanta. That being said, I think the Broncos are going to win. Peyton Manning, I mean, I don't think he's going to be intimidated by this best in the league Seattle defense. The one thing we've seen from Manning over the years, he knows how to adjust to whatever teams throw at him. The big $64,000 question is, will we see that Denver defense that shut down Tom Brady and the rest of the New England Patriots?
Well, I think the motivation for Denver is really high in this game. And with everything that happened in the post game after the NFC Championship game, and with Peyton Manning wanting to get another ring on his hand, it's going to be a hard-fought battle either way. But I am favoring Denver only because that I believe they have more motivation. Seattle's just, it's the second time they've been there. The only other time they've been there they lost, and that was against the Steelers in Super Bowl 40. So they may have a little bit of rust on their shoes, but when all comes down to it, Denver should pull away.
You know, Welker and Manning have been in Super Bowls. Nobody on the Seahawks has ever played in the Super Bowl, so that could come and become a big factor. On a baseball, Ryan Braun, who recently wrapped up a suspension for PED use, vows to return, quote, better than I've ever been after said suspension. Cody, you still support Braun, or do you think he's just a fraud?
No, I will not support Braun, and here's why. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Simply put, you cheated. You toned down the face of the game, and that's not what it's about. It's not about getting the edge on the other player or the other team or anything. Sure, whenever the competitiveness comes down to it, you might start thinking those ways, but in truth, it's all about having fun and having a good time while you're at it, striving to be the best you can be, but in the most legitimate way possible. I don't think PED use is needed in the game at all.
And it's even more noteworthy. This really would have been his second suspension. The first time he got quote unquote suspended, the league, Major League Baseball, kind of screwed up the test gathering process. So Braun basically got off on a technicality. So I mean, so this is not Ryan Braun's first rodeo as a cheater, and it gives me more of a reason to hate the Milwaukee Brewers, other than the fact that their stadium stinks.
Well, we'll see how he performs whenever he comes back to the diamond. You know, the suspension's filed, so you got to be fair and let him play again. So moving on back to the hardwood, Michigan State suffering a home loss to Michigan this past Saturday, 80-75. It was a shocking loss for this strong Spartan team, and it could have possibly costed them a really high seed in the bracket come March Madness time. Creighton, did it cost them anything of value?
No. I mean, this is Michigan. It's not like they lost to Central Michigan or Michigan Tech or the Michigan School of Trades. They lost to Michigan. The last time I checked, Michigan was in the national championship game last year against Louisville. This is not it's a rivalry game. And it's not, I don't think this loss alone is going to knock Sparty out of a chance at a number one seed. Now, if they lose a couple more games, or God forbid they lose to Penn State, then yeah, you could make that argument. But it's a rivalry game. I don't even consider this an upset.
Well, it doesn't hurt them statistically in my mind whenever I was looking at the headlines for this. But what I do believe hurt them is the psychological aspect of it. You had a big home loss against a rival, as you said, going off of that tangent, and could that come back to haunt you? Could that hurt you psychologically? Yes, no, maybe so. It all depends on the coaches and the team as a whole, and coming back strong in their next game and rebounding and getting back up there in the standings.
But if they can return the favor in Ann Arbor, then this might all be moot. But also, there's a lot of basketball left to be played. So moving on, the NHL had a couple of their outdoor Stadium Series games over the weekend. We saw the LA Kings and the Anaheim Ducks of Anaheim, Hiller, Zusa, and Cucamonga play out at Dodger Stadium in 60-degree weather. Meanwhile, the Rangers and the Devils played over in Yankee Stadium. The Devils apparently left their offense in Newark as the Rangers clobbered them 7-3. Cody, do you like these outdoor games?
I do. I think it's very good for the game. You know, with the football stadiums and baseball stadiums are much bigger in terms of seating capacity than hockey arenas probably ever will be within the next many, many years or so. So you can draw out double, triple, quadruple the normal number of fans that you would get to a regular indoor game, and expose the game on national television to a much wider audience to watch a historical event. It's definitely great for the game.
I mean, at what point do you stop calling it historical? It's like there are 6 outdoor games scheduled this year. Now, in years past, you'd have the Winter Classic on New Year's Day, and then every once in a while you'd have a similar event up in Canada. But I mean, it's overkill. You were mentioning about how these stadiums are bigger. Guess what? Money, more butts in the seats. So I'm sure the owners love it, the commissioners love it, and maybe the fans of the individual teams love it, but it's overkill. Maybe 2 or 3 a year. That's fine, but 6, too many.
Yeah, the first thing I thought was that whenever I saw this many games that were going to be outdoors for the season, but it's still good for the game in my mind. Now we're moving back to the hardwood for our last topic of the day. The Miami Heat and Dwayne Wade looking for their 3rd straight NBA title, and his health has become a very big concern for Wade. You know, he missed the past 4 games to rest his knees up, and Creighton, has this team become too reliant on one particular player to help push them forward?
You know, I would say a little bit, except the Miami Heat have a pretty halfway decent player. You've probably heard of him. His name is LeBron James. They also have a lot of talent on that squad. So this is not like, say, Oklahoma City, which is dependent almost entirely on Kevin Durant. This is not like the Lakers of the glory days where they were pretty much always relying on the obnoxiously overrated Kobe Bryant. I mean, Dwayne Wade's out, but hey, they still got LeBron.
Every team has their star. In this case, for the Miami Heat, it would be Dwayne Wade, probably. You could make a very valid argument saying that. But if you become too reliant on one particular player, you're not going to go anywhere. You're just going to fall apart and not go far. So if you're really going to let someone's knees bug you that bad to where you think, oh, we're not going to do really well if Dwayne Wade doesn't play, then you're not going to make it far. That's just a very bad psychological mindset to have.
I mean, you could make that argument if they didn't have LeBron James. They have LeBron James, who, I mean, and some could argue that LeBron James is a much better player overall than Dwayne Wade. So there's that.
Well, that does it for all of our topics, but now we are going to send it over to Zach, our greenskeeper, to clean up our act a little bit, I guess you could say. It's been a fun show, Zach.
Yeah, it has been a fun show. A lot of good topics, and, picking a winner, usually I'll try and find something that I kind of agree with, but throughout the entire show, I've kind of agreed with a lot of what you guys have been saying on different topics. The Pirates about the prospects. Creighton, you brought up Tyen and Polanco. Cody with Munchak, his Hall of Fame resume. But I think when it comes down to it, I'm going to pick a winner in this one. I'm going to go with Cody because of the Munchak theory. I know, Creighton, what you said about the injuries, that does make a difference. But having the resume that Munchak does, being a Hall of Famer, he was directly a coach right after he stopped playing. He's going to make a big difference. He could go away in a couple years, but I think the couple years that the Steelers are going to have him are really going to help develop the offensive line. You got all of your starters back, and Marquise Pouncey's coming back from his injury unless any consequences occur. So I think Munchak is going to be probably the best assistant coach that the Steelers have had in the last few years over Keith Butler, Carnell Lake. He's up there with that. I think Munchak is really what leans me towards picking Cody to win this one.
Well, Zach, you are very, very right whenever I was mentioning about the resume and everything. That's just one thing. To have the credentials to back you up is something that's really strong whenever you are a new face going into a new club. So that does it for us today here on Match Play on CUTV. For Creighton Rabs, our greenskeeper, Zach Lamar, I am Cody Jeanette. And Zach, anything you want to add?
Just like to say, it was a good show today. It was a different kind of point of view, being the greenskeeper. I was host last week. But Creighton, you have any final words for the show?
Yes. Keep an eye out on the Phoenix Suns. They're going to make a rise because they play like a team. Wow, what a concept. Maybe Cal can learn something from them.
So for Creighton Rabs and Zach Lamar, I am Cody Jeanette saying thank you for watching this January 27th edition of Match Play on CUTV.